All right, this passage is not about this hill, but it's about that hill, okay? So I want to talk to you about Mount Tabor that's over there, and it's an Old Testament passage. So we're going to go back in time, okay? All right, so here we are on Mount Precipice, looking over this valley, Jezreel Valley, over behind us, but over there is Mount Tabor. This is a place that's mentioned in the Old Testament and would have been also mentioned in the book of Judges, where a very significant battle happened, most likely right down here in the valley below us. And that's the story I want to tell you now. I want you to understand the time period of the Judges. Just let me recap for a moment. This comes after the Israelites had wandered in the desert for 40 some odd years. They finally get into the land. Joshua divides up the land. That was his big responsibility. They've had great, solid, godly leaders who have led them, Moses and Joshua, namely, who led them. They get into the land, they divide it up by the tribes, and now instead of one main leader that's leading all the people, they're all divided by these, they have these judges and prophets who are living and helping them through a time where they don't have a single leader anymore. This area would have had prophets and judges in it, and there would have been significant battles, some between the tribes, but obviously between those who they're trying to take over, especially as they're settling. They would have been trying to take over land that was already occupied by Canaanites or by Philistines. And when they came into this land, they were used to 40 years in the desert, or they were used to living and having sheep and being shepherds. They weren't used to using fields to grow food and grain. So they would have come into this land, tried to conquer this land, maybe finally figured out, well, let's just work with them. Let's have them work with us, teach us things. So that's when all of a sudden these new gods are added. Down in the desert, they really understood they had one God, right? Who has provided for them every day. But now they come into this land, it's a promised land, it's beautiful, you have the 7 fruits of the land, but they didn't know how to grow them, they didn't know what to do with them. So now they're introduced to new gods like the god of Baal and other gods who they had to trust to bring rain or whatever. And so they started believing these things, that there were other gods besides the one true God. And therefore, as we've seen in other sites, they were falling away from some of their true belief that God was the one true God. And that didn't make the Lord happy, and so we know that. But God used judges and God used prophets to help protect them, but also to keep them on the right path. And so this is a story that's for all the women in the group. This is the girl power story, an amazing story about an amazing woman that would have influenced what happened right here on this mountain and down below. Judges chapter 4. I'm going to read parts of it, explain it, and then we'll make this come to life a little bit as we stand in this place. It says in verse 1, "And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died." Ehud's one of my favorite of all judges. Do you know why he's one of my favorites? He's left-handed and I'm left-handed. So I like lefties. I believe everybody's left-handed till they sin the first time. So if you just, we can go with that. What's that? So Ehud, he dies, but the people continue to do what's evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. We're going to be in Hazor in just a few days. We're going to spend some time there. So they're given over. You can see that the Lord allowed that to happen, right? Part of his discipline was allowing this evil king, Jabin, to take over. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and he oppressed the people of Israel cruelly for 20 years. They had to live under this cruel commander and king. It talks about chariots of iron. That would have been rare, right? These weren't just things made of wood, but they would have had fancy metal work that was a part of their chariots. Obviously lots of money and time spent there. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at the time. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramon and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the people of Israel came up to her for judgment. She's a wise woman. What that means with judgment, she's giving discernment, right? She sits under a tree. People come to her for guidance, to make things right among people, among maybe 2 different parties. But then in verse 6 it says, she sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh Naphtali, and said to him, has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you? Go, gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 of the people of Naphtali and the people of Zebulun. So we understand that Naphtali would have been along the Sea of Galilee. It would have kind of been the mountainous range that includes Mount Arabel and all of that. She says you need to go get 10,000 men from all of these different villages, from Naphtali and Zebulun, and you need to bring them together on Mount Tabor. Has the Lord not been clear with you, right? She says. Here's a woman giving advice to this man who's cowardly and probably should be stronger. And the Midianites and the, excuse me, did I miss a verse? Let's see. Army of men. Yep, my page turned and you didn't tell me. I'm like, wait a second.
Sorry.
Okay. Verse 7. I was reading chapter 7. Okay. And I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the river of Kishon, and his chariots and his troops, and I will give him to you in your hand. And Barak said to her, if you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, then I will not go. So here, it's very clear. You're supposed to gather 10,000 men, all of these 900 chariots made with iron, commanded by Sisera, this probably brutal commander, are going to be brought into his hand. Obviously, God has huge plans, but he's still afraid. Unless you go with me, Deborah, I'm not going. If you don't go, I'm not going. And she's got to be like, oh, you men, you are so hard to live with. Okay, fine, I'll go with you, right? Barak said to her that, and she said, I will surely go. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. And you have to understand, it was a big deal for men to die by the hand of a woman. We see that in Judges chapter 9, I think it's verse 21. It says something like, Amalek, he talks about, hey, kill me now before I'm given over to the hand of a woman. It was disgraceful to be killed by a woman. And so not only that, a woman was going to take out or win the battle, take out the enemy and win the battle. So a woman would have conquered, and that would have been embarrassing. And she's kind of saying that it's going to go down as a woman winning this for you. Then Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called out to Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and 10,000 men went up at his heels, and Deborah went with him. So here's this woman and this man climbing up this hill with 10,000 men. Imagine that, right? It's very forested. They would have been in the trees over there. You would have been able to see them, but they would have been in the trees. Now, Heber, the Kenite, had separated from the Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far as the oak in Zananim, which is near Kadesh. When Sisera told Barak, the son of Abanim, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera called out all of his chariots, 900 chariots of iron, and all the men who were with him. And here they come, right up to this river. And Deborah, Barak, 10,000 men are there on the town. Sisera is now being handed over to their hand. And she says to him in verse 14, get up. For this day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand, does not the Lord go out before you? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. And the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and all his army before Barak by the edge of the sword. And Sisera got down from his chariot and fled away on foot. And Barak pursued his chariot and the armies all the way to Harosheth Hagoyim, and all the army of Sisera fell at the edge of the sword, and not a man was left. An unbelievable battle that happened right here. 900 chariots made of iron. Sisera gets away. He goes over to a tent, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Deborah had said this would happen. Sure enough, it happens. Deborah has a song in the next chapter, chapter 5, and then verse 21, she says that there was a torrent that came. I believe maybe there was a rainstorm that helped them win this battle, right? To take out these iron chariots would have been a crazy thing. But all of a sudden, this rain comes, fills the valley. I think it washed many of them away, and it says not one man was left. It's amazing. Now Sisera fled away on foot. He goes to this tent of Jael, the wife of Hebron, the Kenite, for there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber, the Kenite. A Kenite is a metal worker, right? So it would have made sense that maybe this was a metal worker who was working on the chariots. The tent's not far. And here we see Sisera goes over and sees Jael. Now, as the story goes, it's recounted in Jewish literature, he gets to this place. She might have been even dressed in beautiful clothing, very seductive clothing. In fact, if you read this in Jewish literature, this is a very PG-13, maybe R-rated story, right? That here he goes from the battle, leaves his men, this mighty man, he goes to this wife of Heber, and he goes into her, right? He goes into her tent, but then he lays with her. Jewish literature will even recount that the bed was nicely made, all ready for him to sleep with her. And then, let's keep reading the story. And Jael came out to meet Sisera, came up to him, "Turn aside, my lord, turn away from me, do not be afraid." So he turned aside to her, and she covered him up with a rug, so she makes him all comfortable. "Please give me water to drink, for I'm thirsty." She opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him. This is much more PG-13 or R in the original language, but we'll go with it. "And she said to her, 'Stand at the opening of the tent, and if any man comes and asks, is anyone there? Say no.' But Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand, and then she went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground while he was laying fast asleep in his weariness. And so he died." Yeah, I would think so too. Jewish story is amazing, right? I mean, it's a Bible story, but they expound on it even more, that this battle happens, and here Barak's upset that Sisera got away. We've got to go get him. We've got to find him. He goes to the tent where he knows he is, and now he finds that Sisera's head is nailed to the floor, right? After probably finding comfort, sin, obviously, in another man's wife, here he is, killed at the hand of a woman. And surely that fulfills the prophecy of what Deborah said, that this whole battle will fall into the hands of a woman. A woman will win this battle. It's a crazy story, but it's a story of disobedience. It's a story of valor. Disobedience in the sense that Barak didn't stand up and take the charge by himself. He could have, and I think probably should have. Deborah makes that pretty clear. But Deborah says, "Okay, fine, I'll do this, right? I'll go forward." It's a story of valor for Deborah. She didn't back down from what she knew she needed to do, or what she knew the Lord had said, not necessarily to her, but to Barak. And he said, "Let's go, and God will hand this over." Deborah, she is a woman who had great courage. Some translate her name to say Lady of the Torch. Instead of it being Lady of her husband, it names a name there, it actually means Lady of the Torch. It could be, that might be one translation, that she was this flaming torch of light for truth. A flaming torch of light to speak the truth on behalf of God, but also to go where other, literally, men were not willing to go. That she was able to take a stand. I think the challenge for us is that even when we have major enemies, battles, things to fight, that we live in obedience to the Lord and we truly go forward, no matter how fearful we may be. I don't know about you, but the Lord asks me to do hard things all the time, and I know He asks you to do hard things all the time. And we could be like Barak and say, "Well, I need help, or I need you to go with me. I can't do this without." He had the word of the Lord, right? And Deborah's like, "Fine, I'll take you." But this is going to turn out poorly in the sense that it's handed over to the hands of a woman who wins the battle and Sisera is killed. Not your hands, Barak. And I think there's a lesson for us there, that take courage, take heart, and do the hard things that God calls us to do. So, unbelievable story. Lots of blood down in this valley. All of these valleys, lots of blood. Yeah, and more to come, for sure. Thanks for bearing with me with reading some of those hard names. I'm not great at the hard names, so. But this is what I want to do. I want you just to take maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and I want you to find a place on these rocks, and I want you to do some soul searching. Remember, the overarching question for the trip is, Lord, what are you trying to teach me? You have a lot that He can teach you about Jesus in this place that is near the hometown of Christ. You have some Old Testament things you could recount, be it the story from Judges chapter 4 or other things that happened in this valley. But just allow the Lord to speak to you. I would ask that you don't fall off the cliff. That's probably my major request. But you can go out onto the cliff as much as you'd like.